Hey everybody, today we're drilling down and discussing practical ad monetization execution. So the focus will be on practical implementation, and we will be talking about an ad monetization operator's playbook. To talk about this with us, we are joined by Kelly Kang, a leading ad monetization expert and the founder of the consultancy Game Plan. Before founding her own firm, Kelly led monetization and product teams at some of the industry's biggest names, including Glu Mobile, Big Fish Games, and Aristocrat. And so without further ado, join this discussion to learn how to set up, fix, and optimize your game's mobile ad revenue. Kicking off the discussion with Kelly right now. All right, Kelly, welcome and appreciate you joining. Just to kick things off, I thought we could first focus on the biggest pain points you see in ad monetization. And you, as a consultant who helps game studios of different kinds, different sizes, different capabilities, what are the most common pain points you generally see?
We see a lot of different things from different sizes, but what we usually see, what I usually see is studios are getting squeezed on margins. So even when traffic grows, the revenue doesn't always scale. At the same time, a lot of them are heavily rely on this few big ad tech players, which
Mhm.
makes them very vulnerable when policies or auction dynamic shift, which in this DNA, it happens all the time. There's new policies dropping, new like auction dynamic shifts. And there's also a day-to-day strain. So with the ad ops team, with the advertising, we don't really get the full scale or full headcount. So we're always kind of juggling on the multiple partners, SDKs,
Mhm.
and the reporting.
Right. And Kelly, I'm sorry, but could I stop you there
Yeah.
and just for our audience, because I think there are going to be a number of folks in the audience with different levels of expertise and understanding in terms of the context of Admon. But when you say margins are getting squeezed, could you go into more detail? What do you mean by that? How are game studios getting squeezed on margin when it comes to Admon?
Yeah, so when you're actually when you grow your traffic, you just expect your revenue, Admon revenue to grow as well because we're serving more ads, but that doesn't happen all the time. There are a few factors, but major point is the margin squeezing. What that means is, let's say we call it the middleman. They used
Mhm.
to take 40% or back in the days or 30%, but now we
In the middleman, you're talking about the ad networks.
yes
So
the
like an AppLovin or Unity ads or whoever.
Yeah. So all those ad networks, like all those guys, they used to take 30-40%, or it's contracted to take 30-40% or whatnot.
Mhm.
But because there's all these fees that we are not aware of, that is not part of the margin, meaning there could be a tech fee, another 5%, 3%, 10%. It's not contracted, but
Mhm.
because it's tech fee, it's just added on top of that. And there's all these different fees that we don't see. So
Okay.
because of that, the margin, even though we say, hey, it's 60-40, 70-30, meaning we're going to get 70% of the entire cut or 60% of the entire cut, that doesn't happen. It's most likely we'll be looking at not even 50% if you actually do the start to end math. So that's when I say my margins is also, we're just not getting the margin that we are expecting to be, or we are not getting the share or revenue share, we call old terms, what we used to get.
Okay. And is there anything that a game studio can do to try to get more margin?
Yeah,
Or basically, at this point, because the ad networks have gotten to such a huge scale, you just got to take what you can get. Is that the situation?
I
Or
will say 90% yes, take what you can get. But 10% is actually not focusing on too much on these rev shares, revenue share, we call it, because
uh-huh.
a lot of people are like, I want to do like 70-30 or, 80-20, meaning 80%, I want to get the profit and 20% for the
Yeah.
ad network. Let's not focus on that because at the end of the day, like I said earlier, it doesn't matter what percentage you're contracted to get because at the end of the day, what you see is very different from the percentage you agreed or contracted to be.
Okay.
So focus on what you're actually getting at the end dollar. Don't
Hmm.
focus on the 70-30. I know everyone likes this negotiation tactic, and I mean, I used
Right.
to do it all the time. So
Right.
that makes sense. But at the end of the day, you don't need matters how much are you exactly getting at the end. So look at
Okay.
the net, how much you're getting, rather than let's go deeper into these negotiating terms.
Right. And so your point is there's only so much you can do, focus on the things that you can control. And so then let's talk about that. So let's say you have a game, you're generating some ad monetization revenue, and a client comes to you and says, Kelly, we have some ad monetization in our game. But what does your day one process look like when you take on a new client and you look at their setup, you look at their revenue? Can you walk us through what your audit typically involves? What are you looking for? And where do you potentially see areas that you can improve or not?
Yeah, so day one for us is really getting to the lay of the land. So we obviously, because game team or studios will tell us, hey, this is our genre, this is how the gameplay goes. But
Mhm.
we will note that down. But I like to play the game from the beginning because I want to be the experience. I want the full experience. It can be different from what game team's actually describing it to be.
Mhm.
So we start by looking at the fundamentals, like what mediation setup they're using, how demand sources are configured, like which ad network are they using, and if they're actually taking advantage of this, like in-app header bidding or advanced waterfall. Because I know for this most of the time, small to medium studios like to just set up, hey, this is what I read on an article, or this is what someone says.
Mhm.
I'm gonna follow this exactly. So what we
Right.
do is every games are different. So you'll
Okay.
like to go take a look at the fundamentals of that game specifically. Then dig into the data side of it. What metrics are being currently tracked? Um, and what the frequency cap is. So we'll kind of look at all the current setup as
Mhm.
is, as how it fits the game, and then get a clear picture of what we could do. And also from a player experience, what is the player experience, not from a revenue perspective. So like ad density, like how deep is ad going to, like what is the placement, current placement look like?
Mhm.
And whether the current monetization feels aligned with the retention. So from there, it's usually pretty clear in the picture of what the big gap is, big
Okay.
gaps are, and whether it's a diversification of the demand or ad network, or we are talking about optimization. Maybe we're not fully utilizing advanced bidding, or you're not fully utilizing the advanced waterfall, manual waterfall, whatever it could be,
Right.
and just the kind of operational inefficiencies, which we see a lot,
Okay.
is this kind of minimizing the operation. Because I know we like to complicate and add more layers to it, but sometimes
Uh-huh.
those are not needed, or
Okay.
sometimes it's just kind of everywhere. So we like to kind of make it optimal for
Yeah.
that game studio.
Okay. So Kelly, you mentioned a lot of stuff there. Maybe I could kind of go back and try to unpack some of what you said.
Yeah.
So one of the things you mentioned is like there may be some folks in Admon that read about a particular setup and just copy it. And so I assume what you're talking about is maybe the setup with respect to header bidding versus waterfall. You then also talked about specific metrics that you're looking at. Then you also talked about things like, the frequency of ads and placements. And then you further then talked about certain operational efficiencies. So could we actually dive deeper into those four
Yeah.
areas?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, and I know you're very advanced, but for someone who has a basic understanding of Admon like myself, it'd be great to kind of really understand those areas in more depth. And so for that first one where we talked about header bidding versus waterfall, how do you generally think about that? And what are some of the what does the decision making process look like, or how do you structure that optimally for different kinds of games or different kinds of teams?
So I would say if you have a really lean team, meaning one head count, or not even Admon, we don't typically get one head count. We get half a head count or a quarter head count for the smaller to mid-sized companies. So
Yeah.
if you do have that structure, I would say start with the in-app header bidding. So I know
Hmm.
sometimes you read about this, um, blog and basically saying the manual waterfall actually works better. Yes and no. It really depends on your audience and your scale of the game. So
Okay.
if you have a very, I would say, small studio or mid-sized studio, start with the in-app header bidding, but
Hmm.
as much as you could, meaning don't start with, oh, these two are the big ad network guys, so I'm gonna put them on in-app header bidding. Everyone else I'm gonna try to do manually because I think I know better than the machine, or I can do this because trust me, I've done it. So let's. My suggestion is to start with, if you have a one head count or half a head count, whatever that might be. So if you have a lean team, at the end of the day, start with the in-app header bidding, and then go from there. Once you have everything kind of set up, then you can maybe A/B test in the future, taking
Right.
one in-app header bidding out and making that into a manual waterfall. But start with the in-app header bidding across all when you
Right.
start.
And from an operational perspective, if you go header bidding, that is my understanding, dramatically less work than doing manual waterfalls. Is that
It
correct?
is dramatically less work. So think of it as set up and forget it kind of
Okay.
situation. So once you can set up in-app
Uh-huh.
header bidding, you don't have to touch it. It will do
Right.
its own thing. But in a manual waterfall, you have to consistently update the pricing of that waterfall or continue to add. For example, in-app header bidding means you will just set up one line and
Hmm.
that's it. But
Right.
manual waterfall is you could have 50 lines, you could have 100 lines. So
Right.
depending on what the price point might be, you will have that many lines. And if your tech stack isn't too, I guess, not there yet, let's say it's in the beginning of the phase of your tech stack, then
Hmm.
you might have a higher chance of ads failing if you do it manual waterfall, because
Right.
you're calling at this point 50 lines, 100 lines, so versus just one line millisecond, it could go a lot faster. So I would say it really depends where your setup is, but to start with, in-app header bidding is the best
Okay.
start, and
And
it is quicker.
and when you start to think about going from pure in-app header bidding to like A/B testing some waterfall, when do you start thinking about doing that, or how do you think about what would be step one to that initial step of integrating some kind of hybrid approach or shifting to more of a waterfall based approach for that?
Yeah, so that's when you first consider that, it can be something like when you have a dramatic shift in your game.
Hmm.
So when you have your DAU shift going from 100K to 200K or whatever it might be, or you have a new different geo DAU coming in, or
Hmm.
you want higher CPM. Obviously, everybody wants higher CPM. So eventually, we will want to test that out later. But and I would say the major thing is in the Q4 or whenever there's like a high advertiser that's coming in, basically saying, hey, we have this much budget, we want to allocate it to your app. Or, when you hear something that there's a big advertiser, then you will want to separate them out and give them their own line so that they can feel as much as they can, versus a competing, or maybe there's a tech issue or whatever it might be. So we want to make sure that that's when you test it out. But I would say it's always best idea to test it out once you go live. About 6 months or 8 months later,
Hmm.
that's when you try it out one by one. Because
Right.
even though in-app header bidding is very attractive because there's no work, set it and
Right.
forget it. And I don't think I can do better than the algorithm or the machine. So it makes sense to stick with the in-app header bidding. But to give you a clear, I know I know ad networks hate it when I say this. Not all ad networks are better in app header bidding.
Hmm.
Meaning, if you change them to a manual waterfall what it used to be and give them the rate, like start with the 85, 80, 75, and give them the rate, they come in a lot higher than when you give them the freedom of to pick whichever user they can come in as. So think of it as not all ad networks are ready or better in in-app header bidding.
Okay. And maybe the one other follow-up question along this line of questioning it could be, what would be the impact, or what would be the things that you would watch for when you do start A/B testing or integrating more waterfall? Would it impact things like, or potentially impact things like fill rate, and then require a lot more time from an Admon person to set all that stuff up? What are some of the impacts of that?
I will say fill rate, it will stay about the same just
Okay.
because the more at manual waterfall you add, you're not at, I mean, it's a different story if you're trying to add only 2, 3 lines, but when you're
Hmm.
adding this manual waterfall, you add very granular level, then
Hmm.
you won't see any fill rate issues. But it is a lot more on an ad operation or ad administration person's work day to day. because
Okay.
they consistently have to kind of update the pricing or make sure it comes in at a certain rate
Hmm.
that it should be. So it is a lot more work. Think of it
Right.
as is adding, depending on how granular you do, think of it as adding 2 to 15 hours a week.
Okay.
Yes.
So you probably should be at some level of scale before you consider that.
Yep.
And going back, we mentioned four things. The second thing you talked about was looking at the data. And so about the data, can we talk about that? What are some of the key metrics that you look at, whether it's ad ARPDAU or CPM, or like, can you talk about what specifically are you looking for in the data?
Yeah. So two things I know we all heard of it and we are really focused on is ARPDAU, ad ARPDAU and a
Hmm.
CPM because
Yep.
that's the most known thing. And because we are so focused on those ad ARPDAU or ARPDAU and a CPM, there are a lot of things, the key metrics is that we are missing in ad monetization factor, meaning ad engagement. We want to be able to continue to, so because we're so focused on just the revenue per user and just a CPM, like CPM can be $100, but what if it only feels 2 impression? So let's not focus on those whole CPM. Let's focus on more of a ad engagement. We let's say game team started a new placement or launched a game with the new placement. What does the engagement look like? Are we looking at 70% engaged users? Are we looking at 20% engaged users? So continue to keep on track with this ad engagement is very important. And the ad session, so instead of just counting like ad views, meaning impressions, look at whether users are actually interacting with the ads and how that changes the spend. Think of it as to spend more time in your app. So by having this ad placement, is this user staying within the app longer, or is this placement actually driving the user away? So that, I mean, it sounds simple, but these are the little things that we are not really focusing on when you talk about ad monetization. They only kind of tend to focus on, we are getting such a low CPM, we are getting, our ARPDAU is this, but I mean, all those are good factors, but because of those two main things, we're missing ad engagement, ad session length, and the next thing is impression depth, meaning are people seeing just one ad per session, or are they making it far enough to see multiple ad placement that you set it up? So that actually explains how sticky the user's experience are.
Okay.
So you could set up multiple placements in a different time of the game or different level of the game, but we can think of all this we want, which I see that all the time is, hey, I have this 7 new placement idea. I want to put all of it. Great. But what they're not doing is actually tracking them accordingly, meaning they're looking at it as, hey, we launched this new ad placements, but it's not getting attraction. So we got to get something else. That's the main thing they're doing. But what you should be focusing on is think of it as individual placement and individual impression. Like, so by doing this, is this impacting the other placement? Maybe this is getting a lot of traction with this one new placement that you did, but because of that, maybe other KPIs are falling behind or other placements are not getting attracted. So those are the things that you want to kind of look at.
Kelly, the third thing that you talked about was ad placements, which you have kind of discussed. But for somebody new to Admon, could you kind of describe what are the primary ad placements? And then maybe you could walk through how you decide what kind of ads go into the different kinds of placements.
Yeah, so I would say I love opt-in advertisements.
Hmm.
So opt-in meaning the user isn't, the ads aren't intrusive. User get a say in the ads, meaning they have to click on it in order for them to get to an ad. So they're opting in. I know that's a
Hmm.
really older term, opt-in ads. So when you say opt-in ad, the number one, I'm sure you guys hear is a real video, RV. We call it just kind of RV. What that means is when user opt-in, user clicks an ad, when they watch it, they're getting something in return. It can be 5 coins, it can be soft currency, hard currency. But what it just means for users' time by watching that at defaults are 30 seconds. So by watching it at 30 seconds, they're getting something in return. So that's why we call it video. And Second thing is offer wall. I know this is a very, very old school term, and it's coming back. I think it definitely came back. What it is it's a wall of, it's also an opt-in. User has to click on it to get to that placement. So when they click on it, you will see a wall of, I guess, a list of offers they can do. Meaning by finishing one offer, they'll get, again, hard currency, in this case, meaning 5 coins, 20 coins, depending on what they do. Third thing is interstitial. This is what every user, most of the non administration people call it, advertising, and they're like, we hate ads because it's so intrusive. That is interstitial. What that is, when you're playing game, I don't get an opt. Users don't get an opt-in. So what that means is when you're playing game, it just pops up in the middle of your gameplay. It could be your middle of the gameplay, or when you finish your turn, you get a pop-up ad. You have to wait, depending on the game, 5, 7, 10 seconds. You're forced to watch an ad, and sometimes the X button pops up, or sometimes it doesn't. You gotta wait for 30 seconds. Then the
Right.
X button pops up. So that is the, I would say, most intrusive ad placement. And most well known just because that is embedded in most of the casual games. When you play a game, match 3 ends, then you get this forced ad, and then go to the next. So I recommend, starting with the real video, and offer what, depending on your currency situation within the game. So, and obviously, one thing is banner, depending on your game. If it's static, is your game is there, it's not moving screen. It's just that one default static. Then you could put the tiny little banner on the bottom of the screen. I'll say that's one of the traditional and oldest placement that there is, but we don't see that often these days because our games are consistently evolving, or you keep changing scenes or screens. Because of that, banner cannot stay in that one static page. So that's why you don't see banners much. And the ECPM, we're talking 10 cents, 50 cents rather than $55 in really video. So when you think about these days, it's all about the opt-in placement. So really video, offer wall, and depending on your game type, it can be interstitial.
Do you generally try to personalize the kind of ads that different kinds of players get as far as ad placements are concerned? And how do you generally think about doing that, if you do?
Yeah, so that's what we want to get to, eventually. So when game teams actually launch an ad, we tend to go with the 100% pragmatic and just kind of set it and forget it. Here's all this demand. As long as they're getting ads, they're good. That is not the way that we should be optimizing. So what I recommend is segmenting to the best as we could. Meaning, obviously, when I say segmenting, most of the game teams are capable of segmenting geo or the game level. Free players versus a payers, or non-payers versus a payer. So we can do all of those segments. When I say segment, we're talking a little bit more granular. So think of it as heavy ad watchers, or passive ad watchers. So those are the things that I would like to recommend. Is meaning when they have, every time they have ads available, they continue to watch an ad. That means there's less likely they're gonna actually click on that advertising, right? So we want to give them more of the impression based advertising rather than action based, CPA based. So I would like to segment. I recommend segmenting out, like, depending on a user's ad type, ad watching type, and then few things are level. What this is one thing that we don't do is once they, I don't know, gated level 10 or level 5, that's when they see an ad. That's great, but there also needs to be a differentiation in between level 5 versus level 20, level 100, whatever it might be. There should be a differentiation in between the rewards that they're getting, meaning if they're level 100, their 5 coin means nothing, versus if they're level 5, your 5 coin means so much bigger. So depending on your level, you want to segment those rewards different type as well.
And is that what you meant by ad viewer type, or could you explain what you meant by ad viewer type?
Yeah, ad viewer type meaning is maybe that some users, everyone's different, but you want to create a bucket for those user ad viewer type, meaning as like a passive ad user or aggressive ad viewer. What that means is every time when there's an ad available, some users are, I'm gonna watch this and get these 2 coins as many times as I can until they say you don't have any more ads.
Right.
Those are what we call like aggressive ad
I
type,
see.
or just a passionate ad type versus more passive is we know even though they have ads available, they might not watch it, or they'll watch it maybe once a day. So you might want to give them a different type of advertiser rather than this passionate ad watcher.
Got it. And the fourth thing that you had talked about before was operational efficiencies, I believe. So could you talk about that? What are some of the things that you generally look for or that you think teams can improve upon?
So that is creating that, I guess, the formula and a template. So what that is I know it sounds very simple, but not as simple as it sounds.
Okay.
So meaning on a weekly basis, we like to have our admin people or product managers kind of go into, or every day, hey, let's check this admin, just like IAP. Let's check our signals, like what are the impression looking, how are admin looking like, and all of that. We want to actually make that, simplify it and make it into one template report, so you just automatically just space it out rather than just kind of, I know I've seen this in this, I mean, as much as it sounds easy, it's not. So I see a lot of people just kind of doing this daily manually. They're spending, hour a day is not too bad, so I'll spend this hour a day, but that's 5 hours a week, where it can be down to 1 hour a week if you have that template available. If you have this you're tapping into their APIs, at all ad networks has APIs, tapping into APIs, or simple as drag and all the Excel and put it in, or if you're not tapping into API type yet. So it really depends what you're up to. But I would say the first thing is simplifying the reports and simplifying the with I guess the team granular, meaning within the team, um, a lot of people are actually doing the same thing over and over again, but just different people. So this ad product manager is looking at the same thing versus this administration is looking at the same thing, and this other PM is, or GM is looking at the same thing. But because of that, we're spending 1 hour each. That's 3 hours of one day that everyone's doing same thing. So that's when we want to actually narrow it down to, hey, how can we simplify this?
Got it.
And the last thing is working with the ad network partners, we say. So think of it as yes, they're there to help us. So please not use them, but please work with them in terms of get more data when you can from them, rather than you digging into 5 hours of API and not getting the answer you need.
Right. So I kind of interpret what you have said essentially as like, how do you optimize the reporting? How do you audit? How do you understand the health of your ad monetization? So what are the specific things you should check? How many meetings, the kind of data sources that you're looking at, all that kind of stuff, in addition to like how you interface with your ad partner.
Yeah.
And so I get that. I think maybe the next question I'd be really interested in is maybe if we even took a step back and you thought about a new game. So let's say there's a studio and they've got a game they're really excited about. It has a significant proportion of ad monetization as part of the design in terms of how they would monetize the game. But I wanted to actually be very practical here and ask you about, okay, step one. You're going to launch this game. It's got ad monetization as part of the monetization strategy. What do you actually do? What's the first thing you do, whether it's like picking your ad networks or your mediator or anything like that? Could you just describe, blank slate, you're going to launch a game. What do you do?
Yeah, so for a brand new launch, we start by looking at the game economy and the player flow. So and layer as in to support, not fight retention. So think the first thing we'll do is we define ad formats. Is it gonna be really video? Is it gonna be interstitial like we talked about earlier? So really video is a backbone and interstitial is obviously natural breaks. So the first thing we'll do is define the ad formats, which ad format we'll be using, and to kind of looking into frequency cap and how many rewards or what are we giving it to them, what are we giving users, so they don't inflate the economy and all of that. So in parallel, while we are doing that, we'll look into mediation, and then we'll look into ad network.
Okay.
Meaning, on the mediation, who do we choose, and which mediation fits the best? And once we define the ad format in the beginning, meaning the first thing we're gonna define ad format. Once we define, we will know which ad network we'll be adding after that. So we cannot do vice versa. We cannot. I know a lot of people like we are gonna integrate this mediation, and we are gonna have this 5 ad network because they're popular, and then after that we're like, well, we're gonna have this interstitial, or we're gonna define ad format after. The problem is not all ad networks are strong in certain ad format.
Right.
Therefore, you need to define your ad format first, then go to a second step, which is mediation and the ad network. And let's say you chose Offerwell as an ad format in the beginning, you integrated Meta only. They don't have Offerwell. So you cannot go vice versa. So you really need this ad format, then mediation, and picking the right ad network for your ad format and your game. So that is the first 2 steps that you'll be doing.
Okay. So, and again, just so I fully understand, and if I make a mistake, please feel free to correct me. So like step 1, again, what you had said is actually the product, the game integration of the ads, trying to understand how are you going to integrate ads into the game, like in terms of ad placements and the user experience.
Yep.
The kind of second thing as part of that is also to understand what the value exchange is going to be and the impact to the economy by integrating these ads.
Yep.
And so that's kind of like the product layer in terms of like what you would first do. Then the second thing you were saying is the mediation platform and the ad networks would be like that second part, right? And for that second part, in terms of mediation platform and ad networks, can you walk us through how you think about that? How would you make a decision on which mediation platform to use? And in terms of the ad networks, you had mentioned some networks are good at different kinds of ad formats.
Yeah.
Is that how you would pick that? And then how many for a new game would you want to start with?
Yeah, so on the mediation, as we know, there are only a few big guys currently, only 2, 3, I guess, big guys. So I would like to be at least 6 or 7, but here we are at 2 guys, I'll say. Maybe third one's coming in these days. So on the mediation side, we choose the one that best fits the current stack, meaning is your game big? Is your game small? What is your game genre look like? And reliable in an in-app header bidding, like I mentioned earlier, is we want to start with the in-app header bidding. So even though there are a lot of mediation out there, some of them only supports 2 in-app header bidding ad network, and we have like 5 manual. We do not want to start with them just because it's a lot more operational cost for us. And does this mediation have a clean A/B testing? If the game studio currently doesn't have it, we need to look for a mediation that could provide all the solutions that the game studio currently is lacking in. So I know a lot of game studio actually have their own A/B testing tool or placement level testing or anything. But if they don't have that, it's okay. We just gotta look for the one mediation that actually has the clean A/B testing, placement level reporting, and and stable SDKs and strong scan support, and painless operation, meaning what does the mediation alerts look like? What is their API look like? And what is their QA tool look like? Again, if the game studio has all of that, we don't need to factor this in, but most small to mid-sized games studios don't have that. That means we want to look for a mediation that has all of these answers. And we bias and at the end towards a platform with a broad demand and fast iteration and great debugging tool, just because it's gonna make our launch go way smoother. Um, And for the demand partner, when you say ad network, I will say yes, more the better, but not when you don't have that much impressions, not when you don't have that many users. I would say right now is your focus shouldn't be less integrated than ad network. That was I guess that's still for big companies or back then where, hey, we are only looking at 70%, 80% fill rate. Our users are requesting ad, it's not filling. That is not the case these days. These days is 99% fill rate. It's just because there are more advertisers. And the second thing is that 1% where is tech is likely the tech issue. So when you look at it, think when you're choosing demand partner ad network, I'll say start with the lean core 4 to 6 ad network that covers the global field. And the key formats, like if you have the video interstitial, look for the one that covers all those. For example, core ones, when we say core ones, Admon, Meta, Unity, and depending on AppLovin. And if you need like one or two, a regional specialist like Mintegro and Pango, if APAC really matters for you. So really depends on your game genre and your user base, but start with the 4 to 6 big guys, like I just mentioned, and add on one or two more of an ad network if the APAC or whatever different reasons matter for you.
Kelly, I thought it was great. You were very specific about some of the ad networks that you were looking at. But when it comes to the mediation platforms, could you talk about more specifically like some of the bigger players and how you would make a decision between them?
Yeah, so I would say it really depends on what you're looking for. And there's currently two very big guys, Level Play, Unity's Level Play, and Max, AppLovin Max.
Yep.
So it really depends on what you prefer. Who do you like to work with? Also, it's a matter of do they have all the tech capability that you need? Meaning, do you need A/B testing from them, or do you need this QA tools from them?
Right.
So you want to take a look at both. They offer, even though they're the same thing, they offer a little bit different of those little tech wheels and bezels. So you want to take a look at those before you make that decision, because it really depends on what your studio is capable of currently.
Right. But Kelly, I know you know Josh Chanley, Kelly, but one of the things that Josh has mentioned is that if you use Max, for example, there's a little bit of an advantage from a UA perspective there. Do you also agree with kind of that perspective, or how would you factor that into your decision for a mediation platform?
Yes. So I do agree 50% of
Okay.
what Josh says. And Josh knows this. So I do
Yeah.
agree 50%. You do have an advantage of Max an AppLovin Max, if you are currently spending a lot on AppLovin on UA side.
Okay.
But if your scale is small, I don't think it's that much of a big difference. Meaning if you're not spending too much in UA with AppLovin, I don't think it's that much of difference. And also, if your UA side, the problem these days is back then everyone used to spend 80% of their budget, 70% of their UA budget on via AppLovin. But these days, I do notice that there's all this offer wall or other solution that UA are currently utilizing. That means they're gonna have less and less spend via AppLovin. In that case, I don't think it's a big factor. Again, unless you're using big chunk of UA dollar through AppLovin, then I think yes, it's beneficial for their algorithm to have your Admon better if you're using their AppLovin UA.
Okay. And just going back to like this scenario in which we have this new game being launched, and I wanted to, so you've talked about some of the initial first steps and the things that you need to consider, but now I wanted to get your thoughts and feedback on what kind of team is necessary when you're going to first launch this game. You want your Admon to be optimized. How do you decide on the people that's part of this Admon team, how many people, or is it an existing person? Do you suggest having an internal team versus having like a combination of somebody internal and working with an external consultant, perhaps like a firm like yours? How do you think about that in terms of the team, the staffing, and what they would do?
Yeah, so my opinion towards this hasn't changed from the day
Okay.
one. Is
Uh-huh.
I worked at all these big companies previously, and I am all about actually having a lean team. At least for the lean Admon, I do believe in too many cooks in the kitchen causes problem.
Hmm.
So because of that, I really believe in this lean team. And for example, my current previous company is I was running I'll say what 40 million just on Admon, but
Hmm.
I had my team less than 5 people or 6 people just
Hmm.
because I really like lean team. And here's the reason why. So from an Admon side, the reason why I'm starting a lean team and the making sure the fundamentals are in place, meaning that we always want to focus on everybody should focus on one thing rather than just 10 things spread across. So you don't need a big team right away for a new game. One dedicated person focusing on ad setup, mediation, just a basic optimization day to day is
Hmm.
usually enough. But key early on is to make sure you're tracking properly. So once you do that, I will say probably one. But if you're starting game, I'll say half a headcount is totally fine as well. Um, and as the and in that way, when UA actually starts testing their campaign, the admin person can talk to the UA team to get the right feedback and not just the installs without any context. So you want to give them, you could communicate that internally. And
Hmm.
as a game grows, that's when you scale your admin side as well. Maybe add someone to run A/B tests only on placement, experiment with the ad format, not just sticking with the one ad format, and eventually data analyst, and to dig deeper into the revenue by cohorts and more deeper data. But at the very beginning, one dedicated person, half a headcount, and optimizing early signal is enough. And obviously, I do recommend external but consultant just
Hmm.
because I do believe in rather than having one dedicated junior person, I believe in why not consult with the expert that's been out there
Hmm.
and short term because you just started you don't know if your game or admin is going to be if your admin is going to go this way or other way, so you want to start with a consultant so you're not really committed to a whole thing and you want to get a whole scope of and the newest trend or latest trend with the consultant. So I do believe in that either half a headcount or one dedicated headcount if you could. If
Hmm.
not, I think the best way is to start with the consulting so you can get all the ideas
Right.
and all the strategy in the beginning.
Right. So maybe like a conservative approach would be to start with a half or a single person that maybe works with an external firm like yours.
Yeah.
But then how do you think about scaling? So you mentioned 5 people at 40 million in Admon revenue, for example. How do you how do you model that? Or is so you had mentioned maybe it's a scale of the revenue. Is it, do you divide 40 million by 5 to determine the number of people you need? Or how do you think about that? Or is it more organic, like, there's a lot of work here for the things that we're trying to do. Just add another person because of the amount of work that is being added on as you start to scale.
Yeah, so I am very finance driven,
Hmm.
meaning because I was actually reporting to CFO. So all I
Hmm.
think about is kind of how does everything back up by the number? So it
Hmm.
could be a good or bad sign. But good news is at the end of the day, we're going to make money.
Right.
How I determine is I like to look at per head count, how much could that head count bring per year?
Mm.
Meaning, are we talking 1 million or are we talking 200,000. So I will look at that ratio and go from there. Obviously, it'll depend on every game. Like 1 million could mean big difference, and maybe this headcount only costs us 80K. Then yes, it's a no-brainer, but no, not really. Just because you want to think about what is that. We're not looking at just apple to apple at this point. We have to look at all different factors. Meaning, by having this headcount, would it take away from other persons, or are they working on other this? So you want to factor in everything. But at the end of the day, I like to look at it by per head count. What could they bring per year? What is my upside per year by doing this full time? And that's why I couldn't justify back in the days. We went from 20 million, 40 million, 60 million at one point. I could not justify of adding more, just because by adding more, it will make our life easier. But I don't think it'll bring significant 5 million or 3 million a year more.
Right.
And that's when we did have one or two actually individual contractors back then, just because I see more of a revenue benefit through that route rather than having a full time. Because again, this advertising industry is still growing and it changes all the time. There might be a lot of work this month and next month, but the following month, I'm not sure if it's gonna be there or not. In that case, I cannot justify, I cannot guarantee the return. So that's when we'll go just kind of temporary route. So think of it as, or I would like to suggest as a revenue return per year.
Got it. And now that we've kind of talked about like getting things kicked off and starting, I wanted to now shift towards you're operating a game. And then I had a number of questions in terms of like how you think about optimizing efficiency or maybe differences. And so maybe the first question I can ask you, and I know, Kelly, you've got a lot of great experience. You've worked across a lot of different genres, right? So I think you were at Glu, so you worked on lifestyle games, Big Fish, casual puzzle games, Aristocrat, social casino. So when you look at a ad monetization strategy across different genres, is there a big difference as far as whether it's specific KPIs or placements or things like that? From a strategy perspective, how do you think about different genres, or is it generally relatively the same?
That's a good question, because ad strategy really does depend on genre and
Okay.
have to adapt to the genre and player mindset. So, for example, in casual games, players are often very tolerant with ad, especially real to video, because play, casual puzzle games, users have few different casual puzzle games on their phone, and most of them come with the video. So they are very tolerant with ads. They know what ads are. So it ties directly to the progression as well. So they need to watch this so they can get two more moves after this turn. So they're watching ad to get more extra move, power up, and a second chance. So in that space, in that genre, you can lean into higher ad frequency because it feels fair and it is part of the game loop.
Mhm.
But when you're talking about with the lifestyle game, it's also audience is very different. Players here are more creative, and so their ad experience should be much lighter and
Mhm.
more integrated. So
Okay.
meaning they, when you just add advertising on top of their game, they will notice it because they're more creative, they're more artsy. They'll look at it, goes, no, I hate that. I hate that it's there. So frequency is usually a lot lower than casual games, and the placements needs to be feel optional and additive rather than just kind of part of the game. So like really video that gives you extra decor item, they will love it. But if you push too many interstitial for this type of ads, like this type of game, you will break the game flow. Therefore, you'll risk the churn. And lastly, social casino is a whole different genre, whole different layer. Players are often spending real money and a lot of money. So their value are they want to feel like it's premium feel when they play this social casino game. So ad strategy tends to be more on a lighter and a very conservative side. So ads might be used more tactically rather than just addition to it. And real placement it should extend the session. So you're not actually putting ready video placement into social casino games to make a lot of money. You're actually putting in to extend the session so the user can have more fun and so that they want to play more and more. So the frequency should be very undercut and monetization model should be a lot lighter. So to kind of sum up, so for me, it's always kind of comes back to understand the player's motivation in that
Mhm.
game, in that genre, and are they more quick quick sessions, or are they longer sessions within the every time they play the game, or is this more of a competition, or is this more of a casually playing game? And that drives not just the frequency but also the type of ad format that we're gonna use in that game.
Got it. And also operationally, I wanted to ask you about kind of common mistakes and quick wins, but let's talk about common mistakes first. So you, again, we've already started, you're kind of operating your game. What are some of the mistakes you commonly see that maybe folks in our audience should be looking out for?
I'll say, I think I did this article not long ago too, but it's one of the biggest mistake I see is the teams treating Admon as an afterthought.
Okay.
And this is common mistake. I will say 8 out of 10 games, or what I encounter is they make their game, they launch it, and they go, "Hey, I edit this placement. How does it look?" And that's when you come in and goes, "Okay, you definitely edit this after your game." They're like, "How do you know?" Because it looks very integrated within the game. It's because that usually means there's a missed revenue and the bad data early on, meaning you could edit, but I can tell by the data that the placement could be sparkly as possible, but I can tell by the data, hey, your data signal, where's the early on data? And they're like, well, we added this after the game, so we don't have that. So those are the little things that we're missing. And I also see teams overloading players with a lot of ads in the beginning because
Right.
they're like, I heard Admon is a thing. I heard we could make so much money in Admon, which is, I love it. I love to hear that, but not when you're not doing it right. Meaning they're basically saying, we're going to start Interstitial in level 3 because that's what other games and that's what they did. And we're going to give them, I don't know, every other turn or whatever it might be. So they're overloading players with this interstitial in the game early on in the game. What that means is they can spike churn before even they learn what your LTV, true LTV looks like. So now they're looking at the game team's looking at, oh, their LTV is only 5 days. I'm like, well, because you start overloading with ad in day 4. Therefore, it's going to be day 5. So you want to wait till your true LTV comes out before you start sending them, showing them too much ad. And frequency and placement needs to match the player journey. You cannot say, oh, I once saw 5 ads per when I played the other game, so I'm gonna do 5 ads. Your player journey is different from that other game's player journey. So maybe 5 is not enough. Maybe your game's harder. It should be more. Maybe your game's too easy. 5 means it's too much for your game.
Right.
So it depends on your game player's journey and your game economy and your game insights. Everything's gonna change. And finally, is not having a clean measurement, the data perspective. So you're not tracking it right. Your tracking isn't set up right. So you might be collecting all the data, but you're not actually looking at them. And that is the biggest, I'll say, data perspective that I see a lot is UA team is flying blind, meaning UA is spending all of this. They're saying, "Oh, we made this much money by spending this," but I'm like, "Are you?" But they're not looking at it in terms of ARPDAU and LTV perspective. So if that happens, then it can get costly very quick.
Right. And Kelly, I wanted to actually maybe dig a little bit deeper into
Yeah.
the second point that you had mentioned, which is overloading players with ads. So certainly if you like ramped up the frequency, added more ad placements, you could see a sudden increase in ad ARPDAU and everyone's like, yay, we're making a lot more money. But to your point, then you could have additional churn or your LTV could reduce. Could you talk about what specifically you generally look at when you're trying to optimize for, you know, the amount of ads that you're showing or things like that? Do you look for like a DX ARPU? Do you look at a specific churn metric? What do you generally look at to optimize the amount of ads that are shown and the sort of ad placements?
Yeah, so in terms of in casual games,
Mhm.
I'll look at as a session length. So
Okay.
how much are they playing? Meaning when they open the app, are they playing as if let's say it's 2 minutes? Then are they consistently playing 2 minutes, or are they dropping off early?
Mhm.
Or when they do drop off, do they not come back? or do they
Right.
come back? Also, how many times do they come back a day? And in terms of different genres, social casino, we don't look at that. It doesn't matter. What you look at is what is their entire LTV look like. So I really depends on the genre, but those are the few things I'll look at. And also, I cannot stress enough is the long term LTV, meaning when we are talking about it, we look at D30. I mean, like I said, we raise the we raise the impression cap, we raise frequency cap. Everything's looking great. We just made 7 cents more per user. Great. But was that for 2 days only? Was that for 5 days only?
Right.
What is a D30 look like? What is a D60 look like? So when I actually turn on any of the A/B testing on, what I always have a holdout,
Sure.
obviously, and even when the result is great in the D60, D90, we don't fully launch that until the 6 month or whatever it might be, because we will always hold 10% to that group to look at the long-term impact.
Got it.
Short-term wise, yes, we always see more revenue, but is that sustainable? And also, what KPI is it messing up? If everything's up, great, but if that's way too good to be true. So if something's likely to be a little lower, so it's just a more of a is a trade-off worth it? Or and then the most I'll say the metrics getting impacted is always the LTV and a churn rate. Especially if you are serving a lot of interstitial, churn is the number one factor.
Mhm.
And I know people, when you look at it like right then, they're like, oh, I looked at the D7 and churn rate is exactly the same as what it was before we sent it, or before we actually improved or changed our impression, changed our frequency. But what is D30 look like? What is D60 look like? So I cannot stress enough to look at the longer term.
And so those are the common mistakes. Any thoughts on quick wins, like quick things you can do to just try to boost stuff?
Yeah, I mean, studio feels our revenue is kind of plateau, which happens a lot. We do a lot of testing and it just kind of stays still, or it goes down little by little. The first thing I recommend is look at your placement and frequency. It sounds easy, but often the quickest win comes from a very, very fine tuning, meaning
Mm.
how ads are integrated into player journey. So, for example, it's testing ready video in a new spot. So I know you have this already, ready video spot, but testing in a new spot where player journey feels like it's part of the game and it feels natural. And so right after level completion, or maybe a bonus chest or a lack of new big stuff. So it can be something like that. But testing out a new placement and the frequency is the first easiest quick win you can do. And another one, a best win, is refreshing your mediation setup. Because we are in-app header bidding these days, what we tend to do is set it and forget it. But refreshing meaning make sure you're using the bidding when possible, like I mentioned earlier, and adding a new ad network. Or maybe you gotta clean up your waterfall. So
Mm.
small changes like that can definitely impact the direct revenue. And by doing this, an additional is recommendations A/B test frequency cap. It sounds easy, but not that many people actually A/B test. They just assume, oh, I'm gonna go for a 1 through 3 cap a day, so it's gonna work because the more ad, the better it is, or whatever it might be. So increasing rate video availability with slightly adjustment to the interstitial pacing
Mm.
rather than 2 minute, maybe try 2 minute 30 second of pacing, or maybe try, I don't know, different interstitial pacing. So not just showing a lot more ads for interstitial, but um, change around with the pacing. We see just easily 10 to 15% lift in this entire Admon revenue in the DAUs, in the ARPDAU. So I think these are the little quick wins that you
Right.
could.
So kind of what I heard was, sounds like one is just experimentation, whether it's with placement, frequency, all
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. Second is maybe checking your mediation setup. And then third would be like experimenting with different ad networks.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Cool. And maybe the other question I could ask is working with partners. And so I mean, back in the day, it used to be that there were some folks who thought that part of their job was just yelling at their partners to have them like tune some knobs to give them better performance. But can you talk about if you're an admon, what should that relationship with different partners look like? And what can you like, and you mentioned this before, right? As in terms of your operational efficiency, like how you leverage your partners well. Could you talk about if I'm admon in a studio working on a heavily admonetized game, which partners should I be engaging with, and how do I leverage them best? How do I engage with them best to like get our studio more performance or better deals or whatever that may be?
So yelling at partner doesn't move the needle anymore. And trust me, because I used to do this all the time. So I've been in this field for like 14, 15 years. I keep saying 14, so probably longer than that,
Uh,
14 years now. But in the beginning, I definitely yell all the time. It
uh,
worked. It worked. If I yell, they were paying attention to my game. They were paying attention to my needs, so it worked. But these days, most yell to it actually comes from programmatic and not manual deals. So the better strategy here is actually to choose a strong partner, not the individual, but partner as a ad network itself,
mhm.
and set up the fair competition through the mediation or bidding they have. Then focus on optimization and the stuff that you could actually control.
Yeah.
And that means placement, frequency, and player experience. So I will say ad network, ad partners there, but it's not like yelling like we used to, but it's just more of a getting the insight from them within their ad network rather than actually trying to put in manual deals. Because these days, the manual deals, I would say it's only 5% out of the entire 100% deal. 95% is all programmatic and all the algorithm, and they're doing better than humans. That's why there's less of a manual deal and they let their machine take care of it. So it is likely just kind of working with them as a partner.
And maybe I could also ask you about the opposite problem. So let's say you want to like make sure that your admon person is actually working in the interest of the company. Okay. And so how do you prevent your admon lead not to make decisions, whether it's with the mediation platform or ad networks, because that ad network partner is taking them to the Keshi concert, or you know what I'm saying, or at MAU they're doing all these things,
Yeah.
and so like how do you keep the relationship clean and incentivize the admon person to make the right decisions for the interest of the game or the company rather than for hanging out with the partner in some ways.
That's a great question because I had to deal with this the whole time. Is honestly perks and concerts are really fun, and you can't let. But I know you can't let them drive the business decision, but
Right.
they're really fun. I cannot lie. Oh, they're really fun. The way to prevent this is by grounding the partner selection in the data and the process,
Right.
meaning I had a lot of Admon managers under me, and I wonder the same thing. I'm like, are they choosing our ad network certain way? Because I know they just went to Bruno Mars concert. I
Right.
know they just had this Michelin star, restaurant. Is
Yeah.
it because of that? So I mean, I trusted my team, but I had that 20% doubt in my mind. So how I dealt with it is actually with the data and the process. So we will
Mhm.
have a template saying, hey, I want to see these metrics increase by this day. Even if they are giving them this Bruno Mars concert ticket and all of that, they cannot manually
Right.
change the data. So I always kind of look at it as a data and a process, and then performance reliability. It's not really they them as a account manager might be great, but they cannot affect the innovation of the company. So I want to look at it like what's their next 6 month or next 1 year kind of innovation project look like,
Mhm.
and so I want my team to focus on this data and the process rather than this who bought last week's steak dinner, the most recent person. So if you have a clear KPIs and a
Right.
fair testing framework, then you have to hold them accountable for it. So best partner wins because of the result,
Right.
not the entertainment. But this is a very great topic, which I actually got this question many times from other Admon manager as well. They're like, how do I know that my team's not using this? So yeah.
Okay. So I think maybe just kind of shifting and probably in closing, I've got a number of questions where maybe we just look at the future and kind of trends that are happening in Admon. So maybe the first question for this section would really just be around what do you think is happening? Like at the beginning of our conversation, you mentioned that there's some consolidation in terms of the ad network space that's having pressure on margins, for example. What are other trends that you're seeing or that you think that Admon managers should be aware of that could potentially impact their business either currently or in the near-term future?
I mean, there are just two main things I'm really excited about.
Okay.
And one is it might be stretching it, but
Hmm.
one is a rise of an AI in
Okay.
optimization. So meaning the predictive placements, and which takes a lot of manual work of the teams where we're not, basing on this placement what we think is right. But I mean, I trust machine. Then the second one is the evolution of the ad format. So maybe it's interactive ad format, even shoppable ad format.
Mm.
Currently, I feel like our ad format has been kind of plateaued. There hasn't been anything exciting. So I'm really looking forward to even like those interactive, shoppable that feels like part of the experience, and instead of this interstitial interruptions or intrusive ad. And I will say the studio that will win in all of this is to use those tools, but still design ads with the players in mind.
Right. And so to your last comment about studios that will win in ad monetization, so you're saying that you think it's going to be those companies that better use the tools and maybe AI in particular, but what if you were to describe maybe some of the skills or the things that some of these ad monetization managers should be looking at more carefully to become a quote unquote winning studio in Admon? Could you go a little bit deeper in terms of how you're thinking about that?
Yeah, so I would say it's adaptability.
Hmm.
It's very hard to kind of adopt this new thing, unknown things that we are not aware of. We are not really sure what we're adopting to, but this openness, adaptability is the number one thing over any other skills, I would say,
Okay.
just because this AI is new to everyone.
Right.
Um, and the next thing is, I think being within meaning being part of this industry. So be out there, read a lot, speak to other people a lot, rather than I read this, I studied this. I mean, I think those are good for engineer. I'm not really an engineer, but I figure those are good for those engineering type. Like you have to learn somewhere to get to that or do that. But this one is all about kind of sharing experience, sharing, having this partnership, deeper partnership level.
Hmm.
So I will say adaptability and just this partnership, grow this partnership within the industry. I would say that's real, and build a relationship within the industry is very, very important for this ad monetization
All
people.
right. Great. Well, Kelly, thank you so much. And just to close, if there is somebody in the audience who's interested in ad monetization and potentially working with you, what is the best way for them to get in touch with you or to find out more about your company?
Yeah, so go to our website or email us. So it is gameplanadvisor.com,
Okay.
or email us at info@gameplanadvisor.com, and we will get back to you.
All right. Well, Kelly, again, I thought you had a lot of great insights. Definitely want to thank you for your time and for our audience. We will catch you next time. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you so much.